Hello and welcome to today's webinar on using the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society Boston collection. My name is Ginevra Morse, Director of Education and Online Programs at the New England Historic Genealogical Society. I will be moderating today's event. The Jewish Heritage Center at NEHGS is a resource for exploring and preserving the histories of Jewish families and institutions in New England and beyond. We are pleased to offer this webinar today for our members and friends around the world. Our presenters today are Kelsey Sawyer and Jessie Shu. Kelsey is the reference and photo archivist for the Jewish Heritage Center at NEHGS. She received her BA in history from the University of Massachusetts at Boston and an MS in library and information science with a concentration in archives management from Simmons College. In her role at the Jewish Heritage Center, Kelsey manages reference requests and assists researchers with navigating the archives. She is also responsible for a large-scale photo survey project and the development of resources to engage researchers with our collections. Jessie Shu is the Digital Projects Coordinator at Jewish Heritage Center. She is the lead staff person on the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society Boston Digitization project and coordinates all of the digital projects of the JHC. She graduated from Northeastern University with a BA in International Affairs/Economics and minors in East Asian Studies and Japanese. She is currently working towards earning a Master's of Science in Financial Management at Boston University. So between the 19th century and late 1970s, the Boston office of the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society played a key role in helping Jewish immigrants settle in the United States. The records produced by the Boston office are among the most used and requested collection at the Jewish Heritage Center. Today, you will learn more about the history of the organization, how to locate individuals within the collection, how to navigate the Poorvu HIAS digital archives, and how the stories behind the names can add to our historical narrative. I do want to stress again that we will be primarily discussing the Boston office collection, as that is what is held here at the Jewish Heritage Center. We really won't go into the materials from the New York, Philadelphia, or other ports of entry where HIAS operated. At any time during the presentation, please feel free to write a question in the panel to the right of your screen. Our presenters will answer as many as they can in the time provided. And there is no handout for today's presentation, but there is a fantastic finding aid for the collection, which we will highlight in the presentation. I will also include a link to that resource in my follow-up email. And of course, we're also recording this event, so starting tomorrow, you can easily go back and review any of the content from today's presentation. All right, so without further ado, I will turn things over to Kelsey.
Thank you, Ginevra, and welcome everyone to using the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society Boston collections at the Jewish Heritage Center. First, I'm going to provide a very brief look at the context surrounding two big periods of Jewish immigration: Russian and Eastern European Jews escaping pogroms and the Pale of Settlement, and Jews escaping Europe in the time leading up to, during, and just after World War II. The Pale of Settlement was a region in Western Imperial Russia where permanent residency was granted to Jews and where beyond its borders, residency was largely forbidden except for special cases. It was established as a means to address the influx of Jews in the Russian Empire following a number of partitions of Poland by Russia. Over time, increasing legal restrictions made it almost impossible for Jews to settle elsewhere in Russia. While there was a religious nature to the formation of the Pale, it was also largely motivated by economic and nationalistic reasons. During World War II, immigration quotas were based on immigration numbers of a specific country from a time that did not reflect the waves of immigrants trying to enter at the time of World War II. The Johnson-Reed Act of 1924 set the annual immigration quota of any nationality at 2% of the number of foreign-born people of that nationality who were residents in the U.S. in 1890. By the 1930s, there was a worldwide economic depression, which made many countries, including the U.S., unwilling to increase their quotas for fear that immigrants and refugees would compete for jobs or be a burden to strained social services. Nazi Germany also had a forced Jewish emigration policy that saw the Reich retain Jewish immigrants' property, money, and anything else of value, making them impoverished and unable to prove they would not be a burden to the U.S. should they be allowed entry. And now a brief history of the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, or HIAS. HIAS was founded in New York City in the 1880s by the Russian Jewish community of New York in response to the influx of Russian Jewish immigrants fleeing the pogroms in the Pale of Settlement in Russia and Eastern Europe. In 1889, a shelter which was used to house many of the immigrants adopted the name Hebrew Sheltering House Association. This organization merged with HIAS in 1909, and by 1914, had branches operating in Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. HIAS in New York is still operational today. The Boston office of HIAS was chartered in 1904 under the leadership of Harris Poorvu, Hyman Pill, Abraham Alpert, Meyer Bloomfield, Max Wyszynski, and Samuel L. Balin. HIAS operated autonomously from the national office in New York even after their merger in 1916. Between 1914 and 1916, the Boston HIAS was affiliated with the Federated Jewish Charities, now known as Combined Jewish Philanthropies, and in 1948, HIAS became a member of the Combined Jewish Appeal, which was another organization that created the current Combined Jewish Philanthropies. Harris Poorvu served as president for 20 years before becoming treasurer. Abraham Alpert was the educational director of HIAS until his death in 1939. Alpert's daughter Helen became the long-standing executive director of the Boston HIAS office in 1940. The Boston branch of HIAS closed in the 1970s, and their records were donated to us. This includes roughly 14,528 individual case files and nearly 29,000 arrival cards. So what exactly did HIAS do? HIAS ensured that Jewish immigrants had access to holiday and religious services and kosher food, provided shelter and social services, and assisted immigrants with finding employment in schools, and often on short notice. After World War I, HIAS worked with individuals to locate displaced families, replace legal documents, and develop an educational program to help immigrants become naturalized citizens. During World War II, immigration was at the forefront of the HIAS mission as Jews attempted to leave Europe for the United States or Palestine. HIAS arranged for sponsors and worked continuously to help many Jews who wrote to them for help. But immigration quotas made it extremely difficult to help, even when HIAS procured affidavits of sponsorship from relatives. HIAS can offer a wealth of information about the people mentioned in its records. It can give you aliases and spelling variations, countries of origin, addresses, and other family or acquaintances to search a person by. Many of the forms document maiden names as well as the name a person entered the country as before they may have Americanized it. These are all helpful facts that aid a researcher in differentiating between two people who may have the same name in other records. It is a great and unique resource for genealogists. Next, I'm going to show you some of the different types of documents in HIAS and what kinds of information they can provide. Some of the most common kinds of documents in HIAS is correspondence. We have handwritten, typed, and transcripts. We have letters in English, Hebrew, Yiddish, German, Russian, Polish, Spanish, French, Chinese, and Arabic. We have volunteers that assist us in translating some of the languages as well. Letters can be written by the person looking to immigrate or trying to stay in the country, by a sponsor, by a HIAS caseworker, other organizations, even politicians helping to lobby on someone's behalf. Correspondence is often where we find the stories and can get a better sense of someone's personal immigration or naturalization experience. It's their voice coming through in the documents. Various petition forms for naturalization are probably the second most common document in HIAS. They can offer some of the most helpful information to researchers, and I know this might be a little difficult to read, but I'll point out some of the things that this document tells us. This is an application for a certificate of arrival and preliminary form for declaration of intention for Rose Herlichman. She lives on Willow Street in Malden, Massachusetts. She entered the U.S. through Providence, Rhode Island in October of 1923 on the SS Canada of the Faber Line in third class. She was born in Zashkov, Kiev, Russia, present-day Ukraine, on July 15, 1893. Her parents were Moishe Chaim Goodman and Nechama Bick. She previously lived in Bucharest, Romania, and left from Konstanty, Romania. She was destined to her brother Harry Goodman in Cambridge, Mass., and she was accompanied by her son Ben Zion, and we see that he might have also gone by Benjamin. He was also born in Zashkov on January 16, 1916, and there's even a brief description of her physical appearance, with the distinctive mark being that she wore heavy glasses. More often than not, it's transcripts of the naturalization forms that are in someone's file and not the form questionnaire. On this transcript for Rose, likely a different naturalization form than the one we just saw, we see that a note has been made that a recorder previously has misspelled her name as Rosa Ehrlichman. Her place of departure is Constanza, Romania. She's a worker at the Malden Knitting Mills, and Anna Siegel, who also lives at 29 Willow Street, is willing to be a character witness for Rose. The transcripts do not note which form they provide the answers to, but most forms ask the same kind of information, so it's pretty easy to deduce what question is being answered if you use a blank form as a guide, and we can provide copies of blank forms to assist researchers. Sometimes an affidavit or testimony provides more information on the person who has given it, but if that's the person you're researching, then it's an unexpected source of information. In the document on the left, you can see that Alexander Strauss lived on Lowell Street in Peabody. Through his father, he's a citizen, and he's a president of the Tanner Specialty Company, and Peabody was famous for its leather. He is the cousin of Leopold Herlinger, who the file is actually for, and you also have the names of Leopold's wife and children and where they were living in Germany in 1939. The second document is a statement given by Mildred Minsky and provides her own date and place of birth as well as her address. It is on behalf of her cousin Feitel and his wife Sarah Herschlikowitz and their children Sindel and Schmiel Pincus. It also gives their address in Germany. A tracer is a document by someone looking for another person. In HIAS, it's often someone in Europe looking to locate a relative or friend either to assist in their immigration or to send resources back to them in Europe. There can be tracers sent from the US looking for someone in Europe as well. It is typically when someone hasn't heard from them and they hope an agency in that country will be able to locate them just to make sure that they're okay. The tracer on the left is from JEAS, the Central Jewish Emigration Society in Warsaw, on behalf of Wolf Hochbaum, and provides his address in Korzo, Poland. It had recently just separated from the rest of Germany and become part of Poland. He is seeking his uncle Maurice Goodman to ask for financial assistance, and it also provides details on Maurice's life, such as his address, including that he has lived there since 1925, who he works for, and that he has been in the US for at least 25 years. The second tracer is also from JEAS, this time written in German from an R. Refson, who is being sought by their sister Kil Hochbaum. Her message relays that everyone is healthy but destitute, and that they have written letters yet have received no replies, and that she asks for food and clothing to be sent. Telegrams often pertain to information of a more immediate nature, such as additional travel plans after someone has disembarked the ship, like needing to be picked up from a train station in a different state, or a money order is required. The first on the right is to inform Nathan Gaber, who was likely meant to pick up the couple, that Dr. Otto Hochstad and his wife did not arrive on the Saturnia. Again, this provides information of where Gaber was living in 1931 for anyone researching him. The second telegram is for Erna Hertzko, or from Erna Hertzko, requesting a deposit of $400 and a payment of $50 to HIAS in New York. We have lists of detained passengers for very limited years, but HIAS peer workers would meet all the ships that came to Boston and note Jewish passengers who had been detained, debarred, or deported. This is how HIAS may have become involved with an immigrant after they had reached the U.S. and then encountered difficulties entering and needed assistance from an organization who spoke the language, knew how to navigate the red tape, and could provide aid while they awaited a decision on their case. Here you see all passenger names were recorded, including children, age, gender, race, and their destination. There are also notes on why they were detained and whether they were allowed entry or deported. Passports and photographs are much rarer, but they do appear every now and then in files. And the photographs always remind you of the human element in the story these documents tell. Arrival cards range mainly from the 1880s to 1920s and are the record as people came through the port of Boston. Information on the card can include country of origin or last permanent residence, ship name, occupation, and who the person was destined to. Sometimes, if a person was detained, a note was written on the back detailing the detainment and its outcome, whether they were deported or allowed entry. Here we can see Yenta Spack, age 28, female and married, arrived in Boston on November 12, 1904, on the SS Simric. She was not able to read and write, and prior to arriving in the U.S., she lived for 12 weeks in what looks like Novgorod. Something to keep in mind is that there can be lots of variations in place names. A place could have numerous names based on the language that the person spoke, especially in Eastern Europe. There could be a German, Russian, and a local name in Lithuanian or Polish, for example. Also, the person recording likely never heard of many of the small villages, so they wrote it as best they could. We see that Yenta was destined to her husband Moses, who lived on Salem Street in Boston. Notes on the back do not happen for every card and not even for most, but if they were detained, there could be additional information. We see that Moses may have started going by Morris, that he was a marble worker for an Aaron car at the corner of Portland and Charlton Streets. And we also see she was traveling with her children Model, Itzik, and Shmelik, as well as their ages. There are lots of unexpected things that can pop up in HIAS records, and here are just a few of the celebrities we have come across. The document on the left is from Franz Waxman, a multi-Academy Award-winning composer at MGM who wrote the scores for such films as The Bride of Frankenstein, Rebecca, and Sunset Boulevard, and many more. Here, he is thanking HIAS assisting in helping his relatives leave Europe and come to live in California. Next is JFK, when he was still in the U.S. Senate, and he lobbied on behalf of a number of immigrants who faced deportation. Here he's writing to let someone know that they would be able to apply for permanent residence instead of being deported. And last, there's a letter signed by Helen Keller, who actually used an apparatus for her signatures, addressed to Samuel Koleski, who worked at HIAS. The next thing to think about is how to access these documents. So step 1, review the finding aid. And here is what a physical box and folder look like. The finding aid provides a quick electronic guide that mirrors the physical boxes and folders in a collection. The first step most people take in using HIAS is viewing the finding aid to see what is in the collection and to see if it looks possible that the person they are looking for might be in the documents. The finding aid can be viewed as the map to a collection. It gives a brief description into the organization or arrangement of the collection, what types of documents are present, and where those documents are located within the collection by box number and folder number. For each box, the folder numbers start at 1. So in a collection this size, that means that there are over 200 folder number 1s. This is why box number is very important. Including the folder title is always helpful as well. To access our finding aid, go to our website www.jewishheritagecenter.org and go to the Collections tab and then choose Finding Aids from the drop-down menu. Our collections are broken into 2 types, personal collections and institutional collections. So be sure to click on Institutional Collections and then scroll down to Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society Boston Records, I-96. You will then be brought to the finding aid for HIAS. I-96 is the call number for the collection and is unique to this collection, similar to a call number for a library book. And if you make a reference request, you can always include the call number as well. You see on the left that there is a navigation bar, and if you click on any of the items, it will bring you to that location on the finding aid instead of having to scroll through the entire finding aid, which for a collection and finding aid of this size is much easier. I'll be highlighting the series that I think will be most helpful to researchers. The first is Series 1, Individual Case Files. The bulk of the documents actually date from the 30s and 50s, and as we work on digitizing it, we'll also be correcting some of the finding aid. As you'll note, the date range says there are documents from 1886, and this is not accurate. Individual case files are listed alphabetically by a person's surname. These are case files that were opened by HIAS Boston for an individual. They contain all the kinds of documents that I just showed you and offer all kinds of information and facts, as well as often showing the human side of the story through such documents as correspondence and testimonies. You can see that there are 210 boxes in this series, and each box can have anywhere from 40 to 70 folders in it. And as I said before, there are roughly 14,528 individual case files. The folders in Series 2 have yet to be indexed based on individual names, so they do require more searching in the dark, but it can provide the same kinds of information that you might get in an individual case file. The documents in Series 3 are also similar to what you would find in both Series 1 and Series 2, and you can also get the same kind of information as those series. Next to individual case files, arrival cards are our most frequently requested. For these, a name must be given to the archivist, who will then look through the cards to see if there is one for the person you're looking for. This is where some of the earliest HIAS records are, and they mainly date from the early 1900s to 1920s. And as I said before, there are close to 29,000 arrival cards. So step 2, find the box and folder numbers. So for example, if you wanted to view the file for Bruca Alberton, you would note that it is box 1, folder 4. and then you would search our digital collections to see if it has been digitized and uploaded, or if you need to contact JHC Reference for further assistance. Jessie will now talk about the digital collections and how you would go about searching and viewing items that have been digitized.
Thank you, Ginevra, and thank you, Kelsey. I'll start with introducing what digital collections are first. A digital collection or digital archive is an online database of digital objects that can include text, still images, audio, video, or other digital media formats. Jewish Heritage Center's intensive holdings include personal papers, organizational records, photographs, reports, and other materials for researching the history of the Jewish community of Boston. Now, you may ask me why we digitize our collections and what makes digitization important and necessary. First, it is time-saving. Whether you live in or out of the town, it saves you a trip to our office to go through the document, and the collection will be easy to reach a large audience. You can view, download, and share the document as needed. Second, though we welcome researchers to come in and work on the physical document, by digitizing this collection, we limit the amount of handling the risk of damages. Third, digitization also creates a platform for online contribution and conversation. We'll see the screenshots in a bit that we welcome and encourage comments and notes if the researcher knows additional information of the document. He or she is welcome to help us add the information. Last but not least, once the documents have been digitized, they will be stored and secured online for generations. So these are the original document before digitization. In fact, most of the document in the HIAS individual case files are in this condition. They are fragile and crumble, and some of them are even missing parts. Now you can see the document after being digitized, then with much better shapes. The HIAS digitization project started in September 2016, and so far we have digitized 60 out of 210 boxes of individual case files. Now, I'll walk you through the JHC digital collection step by step. This is the main page of the Jewish Heritage Center at NEHGS website. Researchers can access JHC digital collection by clicking the Digital Collections tab on the top of the page and the Select Digital Archive. It will direct us to the next page, which is the Digital Archive. Then we can access to JHC Digital Archive's landing page by clicking this box. Now, we are on the Digital Archive's landing page. On the Digital Archive's landing page, there's a list of collection buckets. These collection buckets represent either a single large collection or a theme with several smaller collections residing within. We follow the 72-year rule, which means as of 2018, we digitize but not upload any document that passed in 1946. We welcome researchers to request references, and we'll scan and send the document as requested via email. By clicking Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society Boston, we'll be directed to the landing page of HIAS Poorvu Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society Boston Digital Archives. As Kelsey just mentioned, HIAS Poorvu was once the president of Boston HIAS office. We named HIAS Digital Archive after his name to thank Poorvu family for funding us with digitizing HIAS collection. We suggest you keep the finding aid open while browsing the digital collection. It will help you locate and find the document. Now on the same page, if you scroll down, you'll be able to access the HIAS finding aid by clicking View Finding Aid. Now let's go back up. We can browse the HIAS digital collection by clicking Browse this collection. Now, we're in the HIAS digital collection browse page. On the top, you can search, browse, and know more about the digital collection. But these tabs are for general search, including searching in American Ancestors Digital Archive. For any specific collection, for example, HIAS in this case, we suggest the researchers use the search area that below these tabs and advanced search.
Advanced search is the best way to search for files if the researcher had requested specific names or box folder number. Now let's see how to use advanced search. By clicking the yellow box, you can find results by typing all of the words, any of the words, the exact phrase, and or none of the words in the fields listed below. You can also add multiple fields and narrow your research results. For example, if you are looking for a person whose last name was Martyr and first name was Isaac, and you found him on the HIAS finding aid. On the finding aid, you learn Martyr Isaac's case file was in box 93, folder 35. In the digital collection, you could either search the file by looking up the box and folder number, in this case, box 93, folder 35, using the exact phrase. Or by typing in the exact phrase of his name in the name field, which is Martyr, Isaac. Now, we found his name in the digital archive, which means it's been digitized. We can access his files by clicking the highlighted link or thumbnails, and you'll be brought to the image viewer screen. To the right of the image, there will be a content sidebar with pages in ascending order. Digital collections have been organized online to imitate the physical collection. So you can click through these pages to view the digital folder in the same order as the physical folder. We see that there are 4 pages in this particular folder for Martyr Isaac, and we're on the first page. For citation purposes, you can select the reference URL option on the image view screen, and the URL will be generated to copy and paste. You can add text, make comments, and save the image to your favorites. You can download and or print the image. You can also view image and text. Here's where you can view the OCR text and image side by side. For your information, OCR is the mechanical or electronic conversion of images of typed, handwritten, or printed text into machine-encoded text. The OCR on the left-hand side is the transcription of the document on the right-hand side. You can flip pages as flipping a book. It allows you to view 2 pages at a time. You can also zoom in or out to see the image clearly. Now let's scroll down to see metadata associated with this page. We'll learn from the description about this document's date, which is 1935, box number 39, folder 35, and the subjects are pretty much the same for all the individual case files. And descriptions, his name, Martyr Isaac, his country of origin, which was where he was born in Russia, his spelling variations or alias, and his associated names. Associated names are other people who appear on this individual's case file. Examples of associated names include friends or family members who either corresponded with HIAS on their behalf, gave witness statement on their behalf, or agreed to be a character witness on the naturalization form. Here we can see that Israel had 3 people associated with his file: Martyr S, Martyr Mayer, and Martyr Zelik. And transcript is the same OCR text we saw on the view text page. On the bottom, you can tag and comment on images. For example, if you know who is in an unidentified photograph, you can add those names as text and or include them in a comment. You can also search results by associated names. If someone was looking for Martyr Mayer, from the previous case file, we learned that Mayer was Isaac's mother's brother. The researcher can find Mayer Martyr from the same file by looking up his name in the associated name field. He is still searchable, even though he did not appear on the HIAS finding aid, but appeared in his brother's case file. Here is the information you can find for Mayer Mother from Isaac's case file. Mayer was 51 years old from Izaslav Volyn, USSR. His brother was Isaac Mother. They were sons of Zelik. Mayer came to the U.S. in 1905. He used to live at 1451 Blue Hill Street, Madison, Massachusetts. He might live with Mr. S. Mother or use Mr. S. Mother as a contact in 1930, and it was the year his brother Isaac last reached him. Isaac wished very much to get in touch with Mayer in 1935. The letter was sent from the Far Eastern Jewish Central Information Bureau on May 6, 1935. You might run into other languages such as Hebrew, Yiddish, Russian, German, etc., and handwritten document. Since our OCR system cannot read or convert foreign languages and handwritten document for now, we have volunteers to help us with translating Hebrew, Yiddish, and German, and to transcribe handwritten document. They work in the office and remotely. For example, this document is from Box 86, Folder 20, page 2, and it was written in Hebrew. Our volunteer who lives in Israel translated this document for us and typed it into our digital archive system. Now, let's back to the search page. There are multiple search options available to researchers on the left. You can narrow your research by these navigations, by description, country of origin, spelling variations or alias, box number, and folder number. Now it's 3B, step 3B, contact us. By emailing jhcreference@nehgs.org, we can help you with finding a particular case file, answering questions about what's been digitized, providing general information about HIAS, and arranging for on-site visits. Here we'll provide 2 HIAS case files, and I'll start mine first. Okay, so this is an individual case file for Israel Lasdun. These documents are petitions filed by Mr. Goodrich, who is Israel's cousin on their behalf. From the document on the left, we learn that Israel S.C. Lasdun and his family hope to enter the United States in the 40s. Israel was born in Königsberg, Germany in 1891 and lived there till 1918. He moved to Memo, Lithuania, which is today Klaipėda, Lithuania, and lived there till 1940. He and his wife Lisbeth lived in Kaunas, Lithuania before moving to Kobe, Japan in 1940. And then they moved to Shanghai, China with their children, Dagmar and Gernard in 1941. From the document on the right, we learned that he worked for himself in exporting and importing business in Memo, Lithuania. He had a sum of money in a bank in New York. On the left, we learn that Israel had a sister, Jenny Herzog, a German citizen who lived at 121 Woodrow Avenue, Dorchester, Massachusetts since December 31st, 1938. And on the right, we can see that Bernard Goodrich was a friend of Israel's sister. He helped Israel and his family with filing petitions and affidavits on their behalf. So this is the testimony and the affidavits that filed by Mr. Goodrich. On the left is the testimony. On the testimony, Mr. Goodrich mentioned that he would give Israel and his family's boardroom as well as some cash for their use until they became self-established, and he would see that they did not become a public charge on any branch of the United States government. On the right is the affidavit filed by Mr. Goodrich, and on the affidavit, he mentioned that he was a citizen of Brookline, Massachusetts, and a jeweler who earned about $20,000 US annually. We found Israel and his family's names on the list or manifest of alien passengers for the United States on Ancestry.com. The good news is that both of them and their 2 children entered the United States in 1947. They were stateless at the time, and their visas were issued in Shanghai in 1947. Lisbeth and their 2 children came to the U.S. by the ship Marine Lakes on June 6th. Israel came to the U.S. on October 31st by the ship General William H. Gordon, a little later than his wife and their children. Both ships came from Shanghai, China, to the port of San Francisco in 1947. They lived in New York since then. This is an interesting case file that represents Jews' movement from Europe to the Far East during World War II. HIAS Boston received fairly amount of applications and requests from China and Japan. Most of the files were sent from Far Eastern Jewish Central Information Bureau for immigrants during the war. In fact, Isaac Marder, the mini case study for the digital archive demo, sent his request to Boston HIAS through the same organization. The Central Information Bureau was founded in 1917 by Sam Manson, a special delegate sent by HIAS in New York to deal with the problems of refugees attempting to reach America and other countries via the Far East. The main office was established in Harbin, China, which is my hometown, by the way. With the Japanese occupation in the early 30s, the Bureau had moved its head office to Shanghai in 1939, and the situation of Jews in Harbin deteriorated. There were some 19,000 Jewish refugees in China at the time. As war progressed, refugee movement became impossible, and the Bureau's main task became the protection of the Jewish refugees in Shanghai. At the end of the war, the Bureau formed parts of a worldwide chain of organizations trying to trace Jewish refugees and try to place Shanghai refugees in secure countries. Now, I'll turn back to Kelsey for her case study.
This is an individual case file for David Fine, and one of the first things you'll see is that it is addressed to David Gore Fine, which is likely the name he entered the country with. At the time, he was living at 194 Branch Street in Lowell, Mass., and according to the letter, he entered the country on a non-quota immigration visa and was included in the German quota. Mr. Fine had said that his place of birth was Sensburg, Germany, and at the time of his birth, it would have been considered East Prussia and had only recently become part of Poland. Today, it is known as Mrgowo, Poland. He's being threatened with deportation for fraudulent certification and entry. The authorities maintain that he was not born in Sensburg, that he was not German, and that the paperwork he provided upon arrival was fake. Additional information included in this letter is that he has a brother, Jack Fine, who lived for a time in Lowell, but left either for California or South America. David Fine also lived in Maritz, which is likely Maretz in Lithuania, and Saratov, Russia, which did have a large ethnic German population. Here he asks HIAS to provide him with examples of questions he might be asked during his naturalization process. This highlights some of the varied assistance HIAS provided, and we also see a second address for David at 215 Princeton Boulevard in Lowell. In this letter, you can get a sense of the confusion David felt following a decision by Congress to deport all criminal aliens. He asks, what do they mean by criminal? Does being an illegal alien make him a criminal, or does one need to commit a crime? This would also explain why he provided a police report from Berlin as documentation to show that he had never committed a crime. We also see that he is married and that his wife is a citizen and that they have a child. David also writes to inform his caseworker that a bill has been introduced in Congress on his behalf by Congresswoman Edith Nourse Rogers, who was one of the first women to serve in the U.S. Congress. He also provides the bill number, which is HR 6579. Here we see that at some point, David attended University of Toulouse in France, and he maintains that he provided his place of birth as Sensburg at the time of his admission. This document shows a third address associated with David at 23 Coral Street in Lowell. And this is the original folder that held David's file. A caseworker would note any interactions they had on the folder, and we can see the last date shows that at the beginning of 1938, David was given a visa, and it includes what appears to be the visa number. So what did these documents tell us? There are two names to search records by, David Fine and David Gorfine, that he was allegedly born in Sensburg, Germany. It was located in East Prussia as a German exclave and is today known as Mrgovo, Poland. He had a brother named Jack Fine who left Lowell, Mass. For either South America or California. He lived in Maritz and Saratov, Russia before coming to the US. It was likely actually Maritz, Lithuania, and Saratov had a large ethnic German population. He attended the university in Toulouse in France, and he lived at 3 addresses in Lowell, 23 Coral Street, 194 Branch Street, and 215 Princeton Boulevard. He was married to a US citizen and had 1 child by 1937. A bill number and the congresswoman who submitted it on his behalf, it was HR 6579, submitted by Congresswoman Edith Norse Rogers. And in 1938, he was ultimately given a visa. And just to remind you, for any reference requests, you can contact us at jhcreference@nehgs.org, and we can help you find a particular case file, answer questions about what has been digitized, provide general information about HIAS, and arrange for an on-site visit.
All right, thank you both. That was a fantastic presentation. So let's take any questions that you may have. If you have something that you'd like to ask, either Jessie or Kelsey, go ahead and type it into the questions panel, and we'll get to as many as we can in the time provided. So Jessie, we have a few questions about approximately, how much of the collection has been digitized, either percentage-wise or what's still left over and what we need to do.
Okay, thank you, Ginevra. So as I said, we had digitized 60 boxes out of 210 boxes, and we hopefully by the end of this fiscal year we can meet our 1/3 mark, which is to finish 70 boxes by the end of August. And the rest is left over. It is still an ongoing project, and we'll keep digitizing more.
Great. Now, a few questions about how to access or how to reach out to New York and the New York collections. Kelsey, do you want to answer that?
Sure. So New York you can access at ajhs.org, and they also have an ongoing HIAS digitization project, and there is a finding aid up, but I don't believe that there is a box list. And they do have spots on their website for you to submit a reference request, and you can find out more information about any other case files that they might have, any questions about their digitization project, even the location of any other port records.
All right, and I think it's also important to point out, even if your ancestor either immigrated through, say, New York or another port, it's not necessarily the records are going to be there in that port of entry. I mean, in Jessie, your case file, you had someone coming from Shanghai, they emigrated through San Francisco and they wound up in New York, but we have their case file. So even if someone ends up, in Massachusetts or goes through Boston, their records may end up somewhere else, or someone who travels through New York, their records might end up here. So, and I think, another question is there a possibility that someone could have multiple case files. So could someone, say Isaac Martyr, have a case file in Boston? Could they also have a case file in New York? Kelsey, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, it's entirely possible that someone could have a file in their name in Boston and New York. A lot of people, they kind of were casting a wide net, trying to make as many connections and contacts to anyone that they might know in the US. So they were constantly just trying to think of people to send any correspondence to, trying to set up a place for them to be able to arrive. So it is entirely possible that there could be a file for someone in two separate archival collections.
Yeah, and I think certainly for those folks who are saying that, that their ancestors came in through New York, I would still look through the Boston collection because something may have wound up. I mean, they may have had a cousin or a contact in the Boston area. And so it's certainly worth looking through. Now, a few questions about access. First, Jessie, do you have to be a member to access either the finding aid or the digital collections?
So you don't have to be a member to access HIAS Finding Aid. It is free and it's up online. If you are a member, you can access HIAS Digital Archive and browse the collection literally now already. If you are not yet a member, you can email us and we'll give you access to the digital archive, and it's free for now.
So if someone requests either a lookup or a scanned copy, and they aren't a member, is there any fee for that request, Jessie?
There is no fee for now. And if it exceeds 10 pages, we'll charge them 25 cents per page.
Okay, great. So a case file under 10 pages, free. No charge for the request or the lookup. But if it is a larger file and we have to do more scanning, then there's a 25-cent per page charge. Not too bad. Now, Kelsey, I know that there is a database of the Boston arrival cards on Ancestry.com. How are those different? Are they the same, or are those different from what the arrival cards that we have in our collection?
So those are scans. They're actually a microfilm of the arrival cards that we have here in Boston. When you find them on Ancestry, it's just a transcript. And so if you want to actually view the arrival card, you would have to email us and we can make a scan of it, and we would just email it to you. And it's always helpful to look at the original. Some of these, they're kind of old. There's very light pencil written on them, or the typewriter might have bled. So how one person reads it one way might be different from another person. So just kind of for your own peace of mind, being able to read it and make your own assessment, is definitely helpful.
All right, and Roy asks, so where are the records kept physically for those that aren't digitized? And if someone does want to come in and view a physical record, is that possible? Kelsey, I'll let you answer that one.
So currently, the HIAS records are kept on site. They are not off-site right now. And so if you did want to come in, you would just contact us and we would set up an appointment. And if you already knew the box and folder numbers, we would make sure that we would have them ready for you to go, and then you could look at them.
Great. And a number of people are asking about, HIAS in Baltimore and Philadelphia, and, we talked about the HIAS offices kind of across the country. Are you aware of any other major digitization projects, or how to maybe access some of those, how to reach out to those offices or kind of the past offices? Kelsey, I'll let you answer that one too.
Other than the large digitization project that New York is doing, I'm not actually sure of any other projects that are being done for any of the other ports. And I would recommend still contacting New York at ajhs.org to find out if they know where those different port records are kept, and if any of them have been digitized or at an earlier time maybe were put onto microfilm.
All right, and Karen asks, how early and late are the records for? You know, you mentioned, Kelsey, that the Boston office branch closed in the 1970s and began, I believe, in 1914 or 04. Is that basically the time span of the records that you see? Does anything kind of expand beyond, say, the 1970s, or when in the 1970s do we have records for? Again, Kelsey, I'll let you answer that.
I believe the latest that we have go up to 1977, and so that's just for the Boston one. And again, in New York, that's still operational today, so they would have ones that go beyond that. I'm not sure about the access of those. And we do have some arrival cards that would predate the 1904, and it's when HIAS was still being called the Hebrew Sheltering Association. So we do have some arrival cards that are from the 1880s or like the 1890s.
Great. Now, if a few people are asking about requesting a lookup, so say they don't find a name in the finding aid, or it's too confusing, or something, what's the process for requesting a lookup? And Jessie, I'll let you answer that.
We recommend researchers to email us before they come in so that we can take a look at the names that they were requesting. Hopefully they're on site, or we can find elsewhere to direct them.
Right, and that email address was provided earlier. It's jhcreference@nehgs.org, and I can also include that in my follow-up email to you after today's presentation. So if you have additional questions, or if you want us to do a lookup on your behalf, or if you just have kind of general questions about HIAS or the Jewish Heritage Center at NEHGS, you can certainly write to that email address. Let's see, maybe just a few more questions before we wrap up for today. We had one question about donating materials. Jamie asks if we have materials that we think may be of interest to add to the collection in Boston. Who do we contact? Kelsey, I'll let you answer that.
So you can contact Stephanie Call, and her email is on our website, and you can inquire about the process of possibly donating something. And again, you can always just email us at our reference, and we'll always make sure that it goes to the correct person. So if that's easier for you, you can put your initial inquiry into our reference email.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for your fantastic questions. If we didn't get to your question today, I do suggest reaching out to that email address, jhcreference@nehgs.org. If you'd like to schedule a consultation or hire our research services team, so if you want more hands-on help with your genealogical research, you can reach out to those two email addresses that you see on your screen. So thank you again for joining us today. As you leave the event, you'll have the opportunity to fill out a survey and give us your feedback. As we continue to expand our webinars and online offerings, any and all feedback is extremely helpful and appreciated. And if you'd like to access more how-to resources or learn about upcoming online educational programs, please visit our online learning center, americanancestors.org/education. I hope to see you at our online programs in the future. Goodbye for now.